Rachael Falk, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you.
Now, we know that this wasn't a cyber attack. Optus said they've never had an outage of this nature. What was different about what happened today?
What was different is this particular outage took their entire network, so their fixed services, their broadband and their mobile offline, and that is unprecedented that you have all services out for that period of time.
Now, Optus says that it's got multiple layers of redundancy, that is to say backup, I think this is right, backup in case of outages. This suggests that they didn't have enough and they weren't good enough.
I think that's right. And look, to be honest with you, you can call it whatever you want. The CEO can come out and say, you know, deep technical fault, you know, major engineering issue. It is what it is. It had a massive impact, significant consequences. And yes, telecommunications networks are complex, but whatever happened, it impacted the backbone of their system today.
So how is it possible that actually for a telco, for a critical service like that, they don't have the redundancies able to deal with even a very large outage?
Well, I think that's a really good question and perhaps directed more to the Optus CEO, but you would think that when they're doing these changes, and I imagine, again, it was an outage or an upgrade or a change or something happened that impacted the backbone, that they would have redundancy, but for whatever reason, that redundancy and backup also failed today. And we all eagerly await the root cause analysis of today from Optus.
Well, we'll come to that in a moment, but do we understand why it took so long for service to be restored?
No, but I can only imagine a couple of things were going on. They realised it impacted all their services, number one, and I don't know this, but I suspect they were also all themselves internally using Optus devices. So if you're reliant on your own Optus mobile and you're all execs on Optus and you've got Optus Wi-Fi and mobile and you all can't communicate with each other, I imagine that caused a bit of a problem. It wouldn't be, I wouldn't think it unusual that Optus were on their network. Similarly, they wouldn't be rushing out and buying Telstra handsets, but now maybe they will be in the future. That may have also hampered the ability for them to even communicate internally.
And just a question, to understand this, is it not possible in an emergency of this scale for their network to be transferred to Telstra?
No, look, I'm not a network engineer, but no, it's not a matter of just simply lifting your network and putting it on another's. They're certainly the only thing that they do transfer is the interoperability of 000 calls on mobile services. And the Minister talked about kind of network camping and that goes on, but they simply can't reroute. They're different systems and really they are different companies for that purpose. Now,
in terms of the communication today, now you've just obviously referred to the fact that the Optus executives presumably were holding Optus devices. That notwithstanding, given how important their service is, how would you rate their communication today?
Look, today was not the day to be a shy CEO. You needed your CEO front and centre out today, early in the morning, hitting every major network, giving presses left, right and centre. You cannot have enough communication on a day like today. And unfortunately, I just don't think we saw that. Again, I'm prepared to forgive Optus for potentially being all on the Optus network. But today was not the Optus CEO's day to be shy. You really need the customer front and centre of this story today.
What does today's event tell us, if anything, about how vulnerable Australia's telcos are?
Well, I think what it is it highlights that telecommunications companies are the backbone of everything connected to the internet. If the telco doesn't work or goes down, you literally cannot function. You forget about anything else about making a call. It is you FPOS, it cripples checking out of the supermarket, it can hamper operations lists. We saw it impacting hospitals, maternity wards. We saw it impacting everything. So there is a fragility there, absolutely. And it is one that I think we all need to consider and our reliance. I don't think we can't go backwards from the reliance, but what we can do is understand the fragility of the telco network. And I think governments get that. There's a whole bunch of legislation around sort of network security. But I think today, 10 hours, 12 hours was a really long time to be without crucial services.
So just explain a little bit in terms of regulation. What are they obliged to do? Are there standards for not having an outage last so long and be so extensive? Have they broken regulations today?
I'm not aware of a standard, and honestly a standard, and I was thinking about that earlier, about a standard being too long for communicating or having an outage. But there are a whole bunch of laws and sort of regulations around network security and what kind of kit they can buy, and keeping and ensuring threats are mitigated, and that's certainly not just telcos, it's all 11 sectors of critical infrastructure, all now through the Security of Critical Infrastructure Act, have obligations that are being switched on to ensure that they have an all hazards approach. So it's not just this, it's an all hazards approach to security and risks, and that's a critical piece of legislation that we have. But absolutely, there are not just standards, they have a whole range of laws they have to keep in place. But the problem here is you can't make the fix go faster. So you could have the minister on the line, a regulator on the line. You just can't make this improve or fix faster. It just has to be found and dealt with, and unfortunately it took longer today. And I'm sure Optus would have hoped it was much quicker, but when you have a root cause of this size, it would have taken them a long time to A, communicate, B, find it, C, fix it.
Now, just in terms of transparency, in the major hack that took place last year, we are not, I think, going to see the report that was commissioned by Optus. We still don't really know the causes of that event. Does Optus have a problem with transparency?
I think generally, whether Optus has a problem, I think you need to be transparent in these circumstances. I think the root cause of a cyber incident shouldn't be a secret, and I've always said that publicly. We need the equivalent of like an ATSB or an NTSB for cyber incidents, so that root cause is known by all businesses and we can learn from that. I think transparency is key. When you're operating a large telecommunications network and 10 million customers were affected today, we had similar numbers for affected in the hack, you absolutely have to be transparent when such a large outage or a breach has the impact and consequences it has.
Rachael Falk, and just to be clear to our audience, you were referring there to the organisations that manage safety in aviation. Rachael Falk, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.